Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about Martin Scorsese. And I know I said in a discussion post that I made that I wasn't going to do any more videos on Scorsese versus Marvel films, as I had already expressed my opinion on that. But this is something different. This is something that has come up today, and I'm afraid that it's going to be something that is going to come up more in the future. And this lie, keep in mind, maybe put your tinfoil hat on a little bit for this one. But this is something where you kind of have to read the writing on the wall, sort of thing. Now, it's obvious that Martin Scorsese, he's coming out with The Irishman, which is coming out on November 27th. And it has a limited theatrical release on November 1st. But the thing is that what's been making more news lately, really, has been his criticism of Marvel films, or more specifically the MCU films, and saying that he doesn't like them and he doesn't think they are cinema. Now, again, I've been over that already, but because of those comments, basically everybody has come out. A lot of people, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people have come out of the woodwork, basically either for or against, and the media has been nonsensically publishing this stuff and basically making a non-story into a story. The man is allowed to not like a movie, just like anybody else. I hate The Last Jedi. I hate it with a passion. I think anybody that watches this channel knows that I hate it with a passion. And kind of think of it, I hate Star Trek Into Darkness with even more of a passion, but that's something I can get to on another day. But I'm allowed to dislike those films if I so choose. And I believe I dislike both of them for objective reasons. Now, do people like those films? Of course, there's plenty of people that probably like those films. I mean, they both made a decent amount of money, so I can imagine that there are plenty of people that probably like them. Does that make them wrong and me right? I mean, we can have a conversation about it, but at the same time, everybody is entitled to an opinion, and so is Scorsese, and so is everybody else. James Gunn is entitled to an opinion. Robert Downey Jr. is entitled to an opinion. Francis Ford Coppola is entitled to an opinion. Everybody who has weighed in on this is entitled to their opinion. And for the media to just keep reporting on it is, I think it's making a story out of a non-story. And now we have today an article that has come up that basically there are various people that are asserting that Martin Scorsese does not have enough female leads in his films, that his films lack female representation. Now, let me go back to this. This is the same old little tactic that the entertainment media loves to use on anybody that doesn't necessarily like to go with their little narrative, or anybody that criticizes a film that prioritizes representation over story. And Scorsese had a very good counterpoint to this, and I will read it verbatim. That's not even a valid point, it's a question I've had for so many years. It is a waste of everybody's time. If a story calls for a female lead, and then he also referenced some of his films that have had female leads, like The Age of Innocence and Casino. I don't remember who the female lead was in The Age of Innocence. I haven't seen that movie in a very long time. But Casino was Sharon Stone. And she actually basically almost shared the same amount of screen time as Robert De Niro in that film, and Joe Pesci. But the thing is that I think that the idea is that if a story calls for a female lead, then you put a female lead. If a story does not call for a female lead, you don't put a female lead in. And a lot of Scorsese's films are based on real life stories. So if there isn't a female lead involved in the real life story, then why would you add one? It doesn't make sense. And I think he's right on that. If the story calls for a female lead, then you put in a female lead. That's fine. It's in service to the story. But what the media likes to spin is they like to spin their little narrative of, oh, well, you don't have female leads because you don't like women, right? It's kind of the idea. They're playing the sexism card with Martin Scorsese. And you don't fucking play the sexism card with Martin Scorsese. That is insane. You don't fucking do that. Martin Scorsese is one of the most accomplished directors in history. You don't do shit like that to Martin Scorsese. But keep in mind that Martin Scorsese has royally pissed off some of the studio system, and now he's criticizing the MCU, which is owned by big boy Disney. So the House of Mouse does not like him, and of course they have some members of the entertainment media in their pocket. And of course those members of the entertainment media are going to try and slander Martin Scorsese now because he wouldn't shut up about it. If it was one statement, I think they would have probably let it go because of Scorsese's status in the film industry. But because he didn't, because they kept poking and prodding him and getting all these other statements from other people and creating this monster that is now started, well, I shouldn't say monster, but creating this thing that is now starting to kind of creep in on a daily basis into the news media. Now they have to demonize him. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to demonize him. They're trying to paint him as a sexist because they're saying he doesn't have enough female leads in his movies. It's the same tactic they've used to defend films that prioritize representation over story. And we've seen it with Star Wars. We've seen it with some of the various superhero films over the past few years. We've seen it with a lot of big tentpole movies that have been coming out over the last few years about people defending them because reasons, as opposed to defending them based on merit. And this is disgusting for the media to do to Martin Scorsese simply for having an opinion. Look, and again, this is something that I reiterate. Everybody is entitled to an opinion. This is a free country. You can have an opinion. But what the media is doing is they tried to make a story out of something that wasn't a story, and now that it is a story, or at least what they perceive to be a story, then now they have to tear him down. And I have a funny feeling this is going to get very ugly. This is going to get extremely ugly. There's going to be a lot of mudslinging in Martin Scorsese's direction, especially if he decides to stand up and defend himself, which I think he should, and I think he has in the statement that I've read here. And I think his films should speak for themselves. But this is probably the first of several stories I would say we're probably going to see about this, where they're going to start asking him about this kind of stuff, and they're going to start trying to paint him in this light. And again, I think it's disgusting. I think it's disgusting whenever the media does this to somebody that has valid opinions. And look, do I like MCU films? Yeah, for the most part I do, except for Captain Marvel. But I pretty much like almost all of them that have come out to some extent. Yeah, maybe Thor: The Dark World too. That one kind of sucked, but for the most part, I enjoy MCU films very much. I wouldn't necessarily say they're deep movies on certain levels. I think there have been deep superhero films. You can look at stuff like the Dark Knight trilogy. You can look at stuff like, even though the Watchmen movie was basically just a rip from the comic books, I do enjoy it. You can look at some superhero movies. Look at Joker. Look at Joker. There's talk about Joker getting awards and stuff like that. It debuted to a standing ovation at I think it was the Tribeca Film Festival. Stuff like that. There are superhero films with depth. I don't necessarily think the MCU films have an extreme amount of depth like you might be able to find with certain other films, and maybe in certain other genres. But I don't think I would write them off personally. But if he does, that's his prerogative. And that's the same thing with Coppola, too. That's his prerogative. I don't think that those films should be demonized. I think that what Coppola said is taking it a bit, I wouldn't say too far, but taking it a step beyond where maybe it needs to be. To calling them despicable. It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be saying that. You directed Godfather 3. So, it's one of those things that I feel like, when people have differing opinions, you need to sit down and you need to have a conversation about it. And if it's an objective opinion, then you will find out that your opinion, is something that can hold water, that your opinion has meaning because it's based on objectivity. Or if it's just based on pure emotional, visceral reaction, then you don't really have a lot to back it up. And I think that's what people have now, is that, Scorsese has an opinion. He has an opinion. It's personal to him. He doesn't really like the films. It's an emotional reaction. He doesn't need to explain it. He knows what it is. And everybody is kind of freaking out on him about it when, I feel like most old school directors that like art films or like more story based films, again like Scorsese and Coppola, are going to fall into that camp where they don't really like MCU films. And I think there's a lot of directors out there like that too, probably that work on that side of the industry. But this is just something that the media is doing to make their attempt at trying to discredit Scorsese, and then on top of that, because he's pissed off the studio system by going to Netflix. I think that a lot of people did not like that choice necessarily either. Maybe some media people as well, but I think definitely some studio executives probably did not like that idea, even though The Irishman was essentially auctioned off to Netflix via Universal. But that's my opinion on this. I want to know yours. Do you think Scorsese deserves to have these allegations levied against him? Do you think that he lacks female representation in his films, or do you think, like me, that this is a load of horse shit and the media is pushing this because they're in Big Disney's pocket? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I'd like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?